They told me it would be just a minute. "Grandma, just wait in the car. We're gonna run in and say hello real quick. You don't have to come out. We'll bring her to meet you after." I smiled and nodded like a fool, like I still believed I belonged in all their plans. The car door closed with a soft click, and I watched them walk up the driveway. Elijah, my grandson, tall like his daddy, his fiancée, all pearls and perfume, my daughter-in-law in her Sunday heels. Laughter trailed behind them like a ribbon, curling into the warm afternoon air. They never even looked back. I sat there, alone. The sun poured in through the windshield, heating the leather seats beneath me. I shifted uncomfortably, hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for communion. I had worn my navy dress, the one with tiny white buttons that Emma said made me look like royalty. I had pinned on my brooch, the one from my sister's chest, silver and shaped like a leaf. I even wore my good shoes, though they pinch. I waited. 10 minutes, 15, then 40. Then a full hour passed while I sat in that driveway like some relic no one had figured out how to throw away yet. They were in there laughing. I could see their silhouettes through the front window. Toasting, maybe. Pouring wine, telling stories, introducing her to everyone. Everyone except me. That's when I realized I wasn't part of the celebration. I was a footnote, a relic, a reminder of a time they didn't want to look at too long. And baby, let me tell you something. When your own blood forgets you, it don't feel like anger first. It feels like vanishing. I turned my face toward the window and watched the magnolia tree in their yard swaying like it had all the time in the world. I thought of the times I held Elijah against my chest, sang to him when he was feverish. I remembered when I stitched his school uniforms by hand, when I worked double shifts just so he could go on that field trip to D.C. He used to reach for me like I was his whole sky. Now I was the one waiting in the car, like someone's forgotten purse. I didn't cry. Not then. But I felt it. Like something small and soft in me curled up tight, like a hand closing around a secret, and I knew. I had to remember who I was, because they sure had forgotten. Before I was the lady they left in the car, I was the woman they all called for. When knees were scraped, when bills piled up, when someone needed a ride across town, or a prayer over the phone, I was the one. You don't forget those years. They live under your skin, like old scars that don't ache until the weather changes. I had Elijah when I was just 16. It wasn't planned. It wasn't easy. But, Lord, it was real. That boy came into the world hollering like he had something to prove. And I knew, right then, this life was going to be about him now. I was still living in my mama's house, still learning how to braid my own hair. But I became a mother with both feet planted. We lived in a neighborhood where the paint peeled off porches, and kids played barefoot, where you could smell fried catfish 3 doors down and everybody knew who had a man and who didn't. I worked at a laundromat during the day and cleaned houses on weekends. Came home bone-tired but never empty, because I had those boys, Elijah and his 2 younger brothers, and they gave me a reason to keep pushing. I remember one Christmas when all I could afford were oranges and socks. I wrapped those socks like they were treasure, watched their faces light up like I'd given them the world. Children don't need fancy things. They need presents, and that I always gave them. Their daddy, Daryl. Well, he was good-looking and sweet when he wanted to be. But sweet don't keep the lights on, and it sure don't stop a man from wandering. He left one morning with a bag of groceries and never came back. Took the truck, the radio, and every ounce of my patience. So I raised those boys alone, taught them how to iron their shirts, how to look a man in the eye, how to never forget where they come from. I raised them with prayer, with grit, with laughter at the dinner table, even when the fridge was near empty. And I didn't just feed their bellies, I fed their souls. When Elijah made it to college, first in our family, I cried so hard I had to pull the car over. I remember the way he hugged me that day, tight and full of promise. He said, "I'm gonna buy you a big house one day, Ma. You just wait." I waited. Years passed. He got a good job, moved into a condo with high ceilings and fancy tiles. His voice on the phone got quicker, like his time cost more than mine. But I kept loving him the same, because that's what mothers do. We love, in full, even when the return is in pieces. So when he asked me to ride with them to meet his fiancée, I said yes, without blinking. I dressed like it mattered, because to me it did. But now I know. They didn't need me. They needed what I represented. A ribbon to tie around the family history, but not the heart that built it. And that was the beginning of my undoing. After that day in the car, something shifted in me. It wasn't a loud break. It wasn't screaming or slamming doors. No, it was quiet. Like when a glass cracks from the inside, and you don't notice until the water leaks out slowly. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not Elijah. Not the other boys. Not even Miss Gloria from church, and Lord knows I told her everything. Because what could I say? They left me outside while they toasted a new bride? I could already hear the soft pity in their voices, the awkward glances. And pity. Pity feels worse than anger when you've lived your life standing tall. So I kept it inside. The next few days I moved through the house like a shadow of myself. I'd go from the kitchen to the porch, sit in my rocker, stare at the same creaking gate, and wonder how long I'd been invisible without noticing. I made dinner like always. Fried okra, cabbage, cornbread. But I couldn't taste a thing. I'd stare at the food on my plate like it belonged to someone else. And the worst part? They didn't even notice. Elijah didn't call. Neither did his brothers. Nobody asked how I felt or why I'd gone so quiet. One Sunday I walked into church and sat 3 rows from the back. I used to sit up front singing with the choir. Now I kept my hands folded tight and prayed small prayers, ones that didn't make noise. I wrote more in my notebook. Pages and pages. I wrote about the time I gave up new shoes so Elijah could have a birthday cake. I wrote about walking to work in the rain, washing floors for women who never looked me in the eye. I wrote about how I used to press their uniforms every Sunday night, humming, "His eye is on the sparrow," under my breath. That notebook held all the pieces of me they no longer saw. Then one day, Elijah called. Not to check in, just to ask if I could make my sweet potato pie for a gathering they were hosting, a family dinner, he said. But I wasn't invited, just the pie. I said yes, made it with tears dripping into the sugar, hands trembling from something I couldn't name. Dropped it off on his porch and drove away before anyone could see my face. At a stoplight, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, the lines around my eyes, the way my mouth sat still like it had forgotten how to smile. And I asked myself, not for the first time, is this what it comes to, after all I gave? It wasn't just about the car. It was about erasure. But here's what they forgot. You can't erase a woman who knows her own story. And baby, I was just starting to remember mine. I didn't slam no doors. I didn't curse nobody out. That's not my way. But I did stop saying yes to things that broke me. Next time Elijah called asking for a favor, something about sewing buttons on a shirt last minute, I said, "No, baby, I'm resting today." He got quiet, like he didn't know who he was talking to. Because for years I had been always available, at their beck and call, a loving ghost in the background. But ghosts don't get flowers. They don't get a seat at the table. They don't get introduced. And I wasn't ready to die while still breathing. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I chose me. I started walking every morning around the block, just to feel the sun on my shoulders, the breeze through my scarf. I signed up for a seniors painting class at the community center. The teacher called me Miss D and said my colors were bold. I laughed for the first time in weeks when I painted a sunflower that looked like a fried egg. But it felt good, holding something that was mine. Then I went back to church, but this time I sat in the front row again. Joined the choir once more, wore a red hat so wide it could catch whispers. People noticed me, hugged me like I still mattered. One Sunday, pastor called for testimonies. I wasn't planning on speaking, but my feet moved on their own. I stood at that pulpit, heart pounding like a drum, and I told them, I was left in a car while my family met a woman they want to call family, and I realized I'd been waiting for folks to see me again, but God never stopped. He saw me when my hands were raw from scrubbing. He saw me when I went hungry so my babies could eat. He saw me when I was too tired to cry. The room went still. Then a from the back. Then, yes, ma'am. Then claps and a standing ovation. But I didn't need applause. I just needed to say it out loud. And when I walked down from that pulpit, lighter than I'd felt in years, I knew something had changed. Later that week, I invited Elijah to my house. Just him. He walked in sheepish, eyes cast low like he knew he'd failed me. I didn't scold him, didn't shame him. I just handed him my notebook, the one full of the life he never asked about. He opened it, flipped pages slowly, read my handwriting, slanted, steady, strong. Then he looked at me, voice low, almost breaking. Ma, I didn't know. And I said, that's the problem, baby. You never asked? 2 weeks passed after that day Elijah held my notebook in his hands. Then came a phone call I didn't expect. Miss Daniels? The voice said, soft and careful. This is Amara. I was hoping I could come see you, if that's all right. I sat there for a second, still. I could hear my heart like footsteps down a long hallway. I didn't owe her nothing. But something in her tone, nervous, maybe even humble, told me this wasn't a performance. Come by Saturday, I said. When she arrived, she was holding a little pie tin, store-bought sweet potato. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. She sat at my kitchen table like she wasn't sure if she belonged. Her hands shook slightly as she passed me the pie. It's not as good as yours, I know. But I wanted to bring something. I nodded, unwrapped the foil. That's all right, baby. It's the showing up that counts. We talked. Not about, Elijah. Not about the wedding. We talked about women, about expectations, about how black women carry entire families on backs that never get to rest, about how we're taught to disappear in service of love. She listened, really listened. Then she said, voice quiet but steady, I didn't know you were in the car that day. I'm sorry. Elijah told me everything. I made him tell me. She reached out, hand trembling slightly. I want to know you. I want my children to know you. And just like that, something cracked open in my chest. Not pain this time, but grace. I held her hand, warm, soft, strong. She was young, but she wasn't blind. Weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, an invitation to the wedding, but not just as a guest, as the one to speak. So I stood there on that big day, in my lavender dress and church hat, high, facing a room full of new beginnings. And I said, "Don't forget the ones who built the road beneath your feet. Don't forget the hands that fed you when there was barely enough. Don't leave love behind just because it's no longer young and shiny." And they listened. Since then, Sundays are different. Elijah comes just to sit. Amara calls to ask how to make my collard greens. They bring flowers. Not because it's Mother's Day, but because it's Wednesday. Sometimes they don't bring nothing but their time. And baby, that's more than enough. I don't wait in no cars anymore. I don't beg to be included, because I built my own table, with hands that never stopped giving. And now, I sit at the head of it.
Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to our channel and stay with us for the next story. It's already waiting for you on the screen. Because every story told by a grandmother carries the strength of generations. Click and keep listening. We'll be right here.